Welcome. In this video, we're going to break down Ssangsu Geombup 5, Form 5, Part 2. Same spiel, different video. Again, I'm wearing this uniform not because the form is not necessarily canonical, but because my interpretations and my nuances to it are essentially an amalgamation of so many different things that's no longer like it's my own little brain baby within reason, right? So keep that in mind as we go through the next part. The beginning of this part is pretty straightforward, actually, right? As forms go, it's like, oh, do a diagonal defense. Not too crazy, right? So if you remember, we just finished stabbing someone over here, popping out of their organs, and from here, up and around, cover. I like to think of that not so much actually striking someone here, so much as it is a clearing shot, being like, hey, I spent so much time facing this one guy doing all sorts of things, and I'm like, hey, probably good to see what's going on behind me, and from here, kind of checking. So, likewise with these other two, it may not necessarily be actually striking someone through, right, through a target, so much as, again, gaining that distance back, right? So if I'm here, again, stepping up, again, this could be thought as a cover, up, and then stepping forward with that diagonal. The reason I'm not as fond of it, right? So take a look at the distance, right? If someone was close enough, get my knee here, up. They were close enough to get my knee with their weak. With a step, straightforward. If they're here, I'm like clubbing them with my hilt more than anything else, right? So more likely than not, this motion is just to get some momentum. I'll do that with a staff in a little bit, just kind of get the same idea. Again, remembering the Ssangsu forms were initially, potentially, theoretically, developed for the Ssangsu Gum. Again, a very, very long sword, right? So as opposed to something that's here, right? So this is essentially a short sword. They're much longer, right? But with the idea is from here, again, generating that power, right? Obviously, you're not going to do this a bunch, but from here, up, around, again, get that distance. Again, something I want you to really focus on is instead of, again, over-exaggeration here, I want you to think very linear motion despite us doing an angular cut, right? So if I'm here, turn, again, going straight forward, cut, turn, straight forward, defense. Again, footwork, linear, although our cuts are going to be angular. Let's take a look at that same combination with a longer weapon. So, longer weapon, right? Theoretically, roughly around here is where the guard would be, and then the hilt is going to be much longer than that, so you can really get a good grip on it. Actually, even longer than this. I'm pointing over there because that's where the sword is that I was using earlier in this video. Has a little bit longer, even a lot longer of a hilt than that, even that, right? But if I was thinking about a block, I can maybe think about striking someone's knee, and then, again, distance is going to be the problem here, right? Because if I was close enough to strike their knee, I'm way too close and probably using a lower portion of the sword, which is more like clubbing them as opposed to cutting them. Versus, again, heavy weapon theoretically, around the head. Let's try that again without, hopefully the microphone flying off again. But from here, again, trying to hit my wall, again, using that momentum, again, using that mass of the weapon to move around, right? There's a nice passive guard as well as maybe even hitting something, right? From here, up, around, throw your weight, defense. Again, with an even heavier weapon, that's going to have even more momentum in order to, go through a target, right? You're not likely to be able to just be like, haha, and not have some sort of damage, at least to your sword, for something like that happening. So this is a raw power strike before you do a running jump 180 diagonal cut in the air, lots of fun. So let's talk about that one and all its implications. Now, we've done a jump cut before. Now, if you remember an explanation from Form 2, theoretically, you could be like hitting like a cavalryman, right? So someone who's riding a horse. Again, just because, again, if they're riding this way, and you're like, huh, I've deflected you. Oh, nope, they're gone. They're way over there by the time you do a jump, not even 360, jump 180 diagonal cut. Very unlikely, right? Again, can you use it to strike just a tall opponent? Again, not necessarily on horseback, or I guess someone on horseback, but they're not moving, which kind of defeats the purpose of a horseman, but that's right. So theoretically, you can be using this to, again, generate more power with that jump cut, getting more height with that jump cut. Also, just getting away from maybe something that's over here, right? An alternative with this motion is theoretically, again, don't love this. You have your back to someone, and your running motion is kind of like goading them to follow you. And then, again, not in the air just yet. So they're behind me. I'm like, oh no, I'm vulnerable. Just kidding, I'm gonna cut you. Now, I like that double cut because the target area shifts, right? Again, something we talked about in our previous form, tail end of 4.3, but third part of 4. But I'm hitting head level, and I'm going to switch my feet as quickly as I can, not gaining height necessarily, just coming a little lower here. And from here, I'm going to do a shoulder roll, theoretically, again, over that person I just cut, or just rock there, or something, right? So whatever your interpretation for justifying a running jump cut, whatever, right? But let's break it down, right? Maybe you're going on top of a rock. Who knows? So from here, there's some really weird stuff that you can imagine in your brain, like, oh, I'm going to jump on top of a horse, and now I'm the horseman. Anyway, don't even. So the mechanics of the jump. So from here, in 2, slide back, using that back knee as propulsion, which we'll do again. Propulsion, up in the air, allegedly switch your feet, and cut. The idea here is I'm stepping, deflecting. So instead of sliding back, deflect, step up, deflect, plant, using this as your jumping off foot, and now it's the exact same motion, right? It's literally just adding 1, 2, instead of just being back here. So from there, exact same thing, we have a little more momentum going forward. So from here, step, step, jump, switch, land. One thing I want to note that I learned a little more recently, this is a landing stance. So instead of our sitting stance, where both feet are facing essentially where my belt knot's going to be, that front foot, or whatever direction I'm cutting, that can be facing that direction as well. So it's essentially kind of like a squatting back stance, essentially. From here, cut. Again, same idea, just essentially switch your feet, going around your head, again as a cover, cut, and we're going to shoulder roll and have some fun. In defense of this move, right? So as a prototype or a drill, it's not bad, right? So I think I may have said something similar when we were talking about Form 2, but the idea of being able to powerfully switch directions, again, not necessarily gaining any height in that strike, because goodness knows doing that's kind of silly, right? But being able to move around a target effectively, powerfully, and gracefully, if I train to be able to jump and do that motion, it's going to be so much easier just to step through it, right? So again, the concept of a form being a worst case or even worst case, right, scenario, and then being able to dial it back when you're kind of like being pressure tested, I think that's a good way to use forms, right? So if I only train to do a spin cut this way, I need a little bit more power to do something. I have to add more information to my body, as opposed to like, hey, I'm used to doing a jump 360, diagonal. It's not 360, jump 180 diagonal. I can do a spin 180 much more easily. more powerfully than I would have if I didn't train that way. So that's my defense of doing a jump like this. It also just kind of looks neat. This is obviously one of those things that we add to like demonstrations and stuff like that, because it is an acrobatic thing that you're going to see more of in Form 9, if you know, you know, where it's application, no, but it's going to be useful. So there we have it. So that's the middle part of Form 5. The end part is going to have some more acrobatic-y things. Again, things that I think are good to know as a martial artist or even just as a person living in the world, right? Shoulder roll is kind of like what I'm hinting at, right? But with that, have some fun with it. Don't strain your muscles too much, because even just doing this, because it's actually quite cold in the studio today, a little bit of a Charlie horse, but make sure you do so in a warmer scenario and have some fun with it. But with that, make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training.